How's it going, everybody? And welcoming you back to another edition of The Life Equation. And though life's mysteries may be complex and seemingly unsolvable, may that never stop us from trying. My name's Zach, as always. Thank you very much for tuning in. Joining us today on the show, we have a very special guest, someone who I've seen around a whole lot, who's, I would like to think, encouraged a lot of people, talked to a lot of people, and really is just a very positive voice, and so one that I think is credible when it comes to talking about motivation and whatnot. So, if everybody would please welcome to the Life Equation, Mr. Gehis. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing all right. You're really selling me so highly today.
Come again?
You're really selling me so highly today.
Yeah, well, I try to do that with a lot of guests. Like I said, I think just across the platforms you've been working with, it's been really cool to see the kinds of things you've done and the people that I believe you've helped. So, it's awesome.
I'd like to think I'd help them, yeah.
Yeah, well, Gaius, once again, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate just so many awesome people being willing to come out and do some things that they're not necessarily comfortable with, talking and really just being open about some issues. You could say that they have to be motivated in order to come out and talk about certain issues, which is going to be the big discussion topic today, mainly motivation. So, yeah, yes, you and I both have been through a lot of life experiences, and a lot of people watching this podcast would definitely agree that there's a lot of amazing things that people can do. You can write stories, you can develop a major application, you can help some company achieve a goal. None of that happens, and nothing else in your personal life tends to happen without motivation. So, to start things off, I guess, what is your overview of motivation? And what would you say is your biggest source of motivation to stream and do what you do?
Well, personally for me, big part of what I do is the streaming and speed running, and both I do think are really important to have the motivation to do so. And I think there's some different aspects to it, but I think like consistently for both of those things, for me, is the fact that I'm able to extract enjoyment from both of those things in various ways, which does help for motivation because if you're able to you know if you're able to get some kind of positive experience out of it, I do think that is very important for that kind of thing. Absolutely.
Would you say happiness is your main motivator for streaming? You do it because you're happy or it makes you happy?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like the fact that you're able to have varied experiences from specifically streaming and the fact that you don't quite exactly know what's going to happen or how far it could go in terms of uh the success, quote unquote. I think it does help for being able to consistently do it more often.
Having things be varied is really something that helps to shake up the experience and make it better. But I also think that what you were sort of getting at is something we've talked about in previous episodes, just going somewhere with the success and having a goal in mind. I think just knowing that doing it in of itself, the process of it, not necessarily what time you're going to get or what game you end up playing is awesome. Now, I know you've experimented with a wide variety of games. Why exactly, like, to sort of harp on the happiness point? I've talked with mainly like, speedrunners of Fly, I guess, on this show. Why specifically
Hmm.
that game? Like, what about speedrunning it do you think makes you happy?
It's interesting. It's sometimes hard to think about it in the simplest terms, but it is the first game that I was able to learn how to speed run, and it it feels like I hit it first try in terms of something I like doing when entering the field of speedrunning. But I don't know, it's just the simplicity of the game itself, and um, also knowing that I'm not half bad at it. I'd say I think that I think it's just a lot of fun to do on my own. It's something I would be doing if if even if there wasn't like a speedrun community. I think I just want to do it anyways because of how fun it is.
I think having a community definitely helps a whole lot, and having something like that that you know you would do, even if there wasn't a whole community or base of support for it, is really cool. Do you think something is a lot harder to stay motivated towards if you're not immediately good at it? Or do you think that some people look at things that they're not necessarily good at, but they can still go with them and learn more about them?
Yeah, I think the something about instant gratification does aid with wanting to pursue more of that thing. Whether like if it has its positives or negatives, but for something as for something social like streaming, I and like speedrunning, yeah, I think the both sides of the coin of having it be simple, but also you know you might not get it the first try. It's just the possibility of knowing that there's something more to it. Like also is like a good motivator for that kind of thing. I'd say.
Can you name something in your life that you didn't pick up immediately, but you still found a lot of joy out of?
Playing guitar, yeah, like doing the instruments. I have not done that in a long time, mostly because of motivation. But the fact that I'm able, like, I at least see personally the value of learning a new instrument and then playing songs that I may create myself, or just even like simply learning uh songs that I just like to listen to. I think that like by itself is a good motivator, which is why like I'm thinking about picking it back up again because like I want to feel that again. I want to like play the music again.
Mhm. Music is a good motivate. Well, I shouldn't say music is the motivator, but having that connection to certain songs and wanting to pick those up, I feel is valuable. I actually picked up guitar very briefly. It was only a couple days, I mean, very briefly. But being able to sit in my college apartment with my buddy who had played a few instruments, and I remember I was just plucking away at It's Been a While by Stained. Really love that song.
Ooh,
And
that is a good one. Yeah.
yeah, it's great. I'm a big nut job for classic rock and sometimes grunge. I think a lot of that hits hard. But yeah, no, definitely just having that connection to the music, having other people relate to that is really great. And that's interesting as well. That's another point. Do you think it's harder to stay motivated to achieve a certain goal if nobody else is really pushing you towards it? Like, did you have anybody else outside of your stream chat who you said, "Yeah, I think you're really good at this. You should keep doing it," or was it more so you were your own battery?
Mm, I think I, I think it's very much specifically for like a me thing, but I very much operate on self motivation most of the time. With streaming specifically, I think for a while I was more so kind of like dreaming about it, and I was kind of like waiting. I felt like I was waiting for the right time to do it, but I recall the first time I realized I could just do it whenever, like why wait kind of thing. Was when I heard one of my friends, at least locally, uh, did some streams on his gaming laptop, and that's all I had. So I thought, wait, I think I should do that if I'm in the same scenario. So that's when I decided that yeah, I think it's time.
It's ironic coming from me who every time I've been streaming, it's been off of my laptop. So, like you said, there's no better time to start. What would you say to some people who have trouble finding self-motivation or maybe just put it off until tomorrow?
I think if you really want to find motivation in something, like if I think it is a good start knowing that you want to do whatever it is that you're doing. I think that itself is a good start. I don't know. I think really considering uh what what enjoyment you could find out of that kind of thing is very important. Like you really ask yourself like why exactly would you like do you want to pursue what it is what you're pursuing, and really break it down into like simple steps. Set I'd say set a deadline, and actual steps. I think that's a good start.
I think adding goals is definitely a big part of it that not a lot of people realize. That's one thing that really kept me from doing this podcast. In fact, I actually tried my hand at podcasting a little bit before I even made this, the life equation. And I
Hmm.
think the reason why I ended up dropping it was just because I felt very unfocused. I didn't really feel like I had any goals or any direction to go. And I was just by myself. I was doing it. And unlike what you're talking about with streaming, I didn't know if I loved it enough at the time where it was something like, yeah, I absolutely want to do this. This sets my soul on fire. With this podcast,
Hmm.
now I don't want that to happen again. And it's not going to happen again because now I have more motivation to stream now that my internet is better, now that I don't have excuses to put it aside and just talk to people. This right here, honestly, I think is kind of where I'm in with your boat, where you say, yeah, streaming is just great. I love doing it. Even without other people, this is something I would love to do. It's kind of hard to make it a one-to-one comparison. Not that I should, but it's hard to make a direct comparison when this show, in a sense, relies on me having other people. If I wanted to, I could just come on here and I could talk about more philosophical topics. And I think if I found the right topic, then I could definitely get into a role about it. Like when I was doing this old podcast, it was about sports. I loved sports for the longest time through high school just because I ended up talking to my friends about it.
Hmm.
Nowadays, I'm not living with my family anymore. Obviously, I'm by myself. I don't get to see a lot of my old buddies who root for our teams. And really, with some of the changes that have come to that industry, that has sort of taken away my motivation to do it, which, looping this all back into what you were saying, happiness, I think, is a big reason why people do anything they do, is because something is fun to them and they feel a purpose from it. That's why people want to stay motivated, and that's why people want to accomplish goals or make sure they stay on a path. Do you think there's a better motivator, or maybe an alternate motivator as opposed to happiness?
Mm, I think it. I think being happy with something is ultimately the biggest reason. But of course, I think it depends on the situation itself, and what it is you're doing. I think this also falls under like the same umbrella, but I think like at least some kind of benefit or something that you could get from it, like whatever that may be. Like even though it's not entirely happiness, that is a benefit. Like some can consider doing an activity if it gets them some kind of monetary gain. I would say like if you want to talk broadly about that, or perhaps like some notoriety, like some things like that, or
No, I mean,
just for like the approval of others as well. I've like there's definitely like various ways that one can go with that kind of topic right there.
do you think notoriety is something that people should shoot for? Like you being recognized is the only reason why you should do this?
I don't have anything against that per se. I do think that uh doing it for a simple reason like happiness, I do think it's just personal fulfillment that is important in that scenario, I would say.
Fulfillment is one thing that people could talk about for a very long time. One thing that I've dabbled on and off with about fulfillment is writing books, actually. I
Hmm.
think that's something that I've grown into. Like when I was making the plans for this conceptual story that I was writing, I wanted to write it. My initial motivation to write it was because I had a lot of friends and people I talked to in college told me I was good at it. I remember writing this philosophy paper, and the people I was working with, they had some ideas growing, but they didn't seem like they really wanted that to be the topic of our paper because we were doing a group assignment. Then when I went forth and put my topic forward, I discussed with them kind of what I wanted to write down. I wrote most of it. Then when everybody read it back to me, they were saying, "You're a really good writer. I like this paragraph here." And when I was writing that personal story I mentioned earlier, I had one of my closest friends. He said to me, "I think you should go for it. I think this is really good. I think this gives you a lot of recognition." And I think fulfillment is definitely one thing that really helps out with that. If I were able to continue writing that story, I think I would have some form of fulfillment in the process of making it after I made the plan. But some people, and I feel like I branch into religion almost every episode of this show, but that's
Hmm.
where a lot of people start to differ on opinions is fulfillment. A lot of people look at that in of itself and they think that once you reach a certain goal or once you help a certain amount of people or once you stream or once you keep doing this, that's your fulfillment. Now, I've heard some people say that in of itself is material, and that becomes a very, very slippery slope of what's really going to fulfill me. But at the end of the day, I think only you kind of understand what fulfillment is. And when you look at life in the grander scheme of things, that's when you really have to break it down. And then you will also sink into a mindset that will tell you, yes, this is something I do want to do. And this is something that really does fulfill me. And I think I'm rambling on a bit here, but that was
Hmm.
another thing that drew me kind of away from authorship was just the amount of time I had. And sometimes my motivation was wavering because I don't have people here. My parents were sort of implicitly telling me that it wasn't a career, which in of itself is true, unless you're somebody like Tolstoy or a famous author. Authorship really isn't going to keep you afloat entirely. And even then, when you see famous writers like Tolstoy talk about their books, they've gone on record saying, yeah, at the end of the day, like, I'm glad I wrote this book, but it wasn't enough to fulfill me, which is crazy to think about when you have some of the most like talented authors in the world and they're saying, "Yeah, I maybe made this legendary thing, but it wasn't enough for me." That's I don't know how you feel about that. To me, that's a terrifying feeling.
I do think something of in that line. I think it is required to have certain scenarios line up to be able to be motivated and like in something that is not entirely you know profitable. One would say, but yeah, that's is what one could say that about like whatever I do, with the streaming thing or speed running that, like one can consider that I'm like these aren't exactly like fields that you are guaranteed to get anything out of in
Mhm.
terms of like a living, but really the scenario like has to line up in order to to be there. But of course, the longer that you stick with it, and if you enjoy, I think you are bound to slip into like that kind of success. I would say
I think if so you're saying like if you do something for long enough, even if there doesn't seem to be any immediate gain of it, somebody's bound to notice or well, okay, no, then I misunderstood your I just put words in your mouth because you said before that
that's okay. Um, yeah, I think sticking with something that like that, for like streaming is the one I like into it the most. I think if you put in the effort as well, and like I say, when things line up, just perfectly, like you start feeling it that it is going somewhere. But yeah, you are bound to get some kind of momentum in the direction that you would like to go to, like if you stick with it long enough. Yes,
what was your moment you would say for streaming where you felt that it was going somewhere, that you wanted to keep rolling?
it's interesting because uh in the moment it's you don't exactly like pinpoint the right moment. I could say it's like I could like point out perhaps like a year, but not exactly like, oh, this right here is the moment that everything happened, right? But I'd say like 2023 or so. Like I was streaming for about I'd say like 3 or so years at that point, and then I had the Sly One record for about 2 of those. And there was a point, it's like, oh, like I the consistency in people showing up when you reflect back on that. Yeah, I think that's if I maintain what's going on here, I think this could eventually be considered successful in my eyes.
How much of a role do you think other people have in giving you motivation?
It's interesting because this is a specific topic that I think about personally, but I am self motivated. I can, apply the battery to myself if most of the time, but it is I've always said that in especially what I do with speed running and streaming, I do say that I perform better if there's a quote unquote audience there to to see it happen. I do think I do think like a little bit of the showman like in me comes out, and I do think I am better like when there's others around.
Some people can't even say that they're like that. Some people just fold when they see a lot of people, whether it's anxiety, pressure, they just maybe are introverted. They don't really like having other people around. And do you say that's another part of streaming that gives you fulfillment is a lot of people there and then you hit a big trick or you say something really cool?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. Uh, I think the moment that I realized that was a part of who I was as a person was I was watching a documentary on Super Smash Brothers Melee. There's
Oh
like
my
since
gosh.
there's a couple of those, and one of the top players of that game by the name of Mango, who is exactly the same way. Who it was mentioned in that documentary how he he plays at his best when there is people there to cheer him on specifically. Like, and the more people that there are, the better like he feels about it is, and that's exactly how I like into what I do personally.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you're making me think about this now. I feel like you and Mango are the kind of people that you guys would totally swing a drink together. I think you two would get along great.
Well, that is, that's funny because I think at this point, neither of us would drink at the moment.
Oh, I'm just saying though, like I do think I've seen him. If for those of you listening in, if you've never seen Mango from Super Smash Brothers Melee, there are you won't have to look very far on the internet to find clips of him. He certainly is his own personality, but I definitely see what you're getting at. At least I think I do. Stop me if I'm wrong here, but Mango definitely with the environment and with a lot of those big matches, you see people singing the United States national anthem while he's
Mhm.
out there chanting his name. And some people absolutely thrive off that. Like they can't get enough of it. It's just like a part of the experience. And in a way, I definitely understand why that's a big motivator. I know you said you're very self-motivated, but it also, at least I think it doesn't hurt to have other people around you to, give you that boost, just to remind you and to be a part of the experience. I've always thought that, like I was kind of getting at earlier, this podcast, I might have motivation to do this by myself if I wanted to just pick up a philosophical, just inventing new words on the fly too philosophical topic, if I wanted to just put one down and talk about my brief thoughts about it, that could be interesting. Maybe as a creative form of like active journalism is the best way I can put it. But
Of course.
this is another thing I love about it is whether it's, people who play video games or people who preach for a living or people who run, or people who like are exercise science majors, people who write, do math, all of these different experiences make talking about these things more in depth and more fun, especially as somebody who is trying to actively discover more of myself in a sense and really stop reciting points and try to break into issues. At least I want to try and be more like that. I think having
Mhm.
other people around is a big part of that.
Yeah, I do agree. It's just I think in what I do, I did mention that for speedrunning specifically, I definitely would be. I think I would be doing like if there was like a smaller community or like even no community at all. I think the simple fact that speedrunning Sly One specifically is fun by itself is something that I would still be doing. I think like it's still pursuing that because even then I do play quite a bit of it, like almost every day of it, like offline, just doing like a run, just like I whenever I have nothing to do, I just turn on the game because like it is still fun. Like it's not just like it's I'm not in a scenario where I do it so much that I'm like tired of seeing it, like but like I'm still able to have my enjoyment out of it still to this day.
Do you think grinding for world records or like trying to push yourself like to that point, do you think you've done a good job of balancing that like you were getting at? You don't think that having pressure on you to be a world record holder, if any exists, you don't think that takes away from it at all?
I think I definitely am capable of handling that because I've always said that I've always considered myself more of a streamer than a speedrunner. Like I can have the one without the other if need be. Really, the speed like being at that level at the game is enjoyable to me, but it's not entirely the personality that I you know, like align with entirely. But I do think the balance of finding like the enjoyment out of it because people sometimes grind it to the point where they just can't stand the game anymore. I've seen that happen multiple times, but
Mhm.
I think with myself, I think just keeping it fun and just lighthearted along with if when I'm streaming it with chat, just having like just more so focus on like having a good time with it rather than just hardcore grinding it the whole entire time.
No, I honestly believe that's a really valuable message that to some people listening in on this, they may think that sounds cheesy, but it really is true. That's something I've had to come to grips with as I've moved out on my own and as I've become more independent. All of these topics or all of these answers to big questions you hear about with having fun or just being yourself, it all sounds so by the numbers, but people say it because it's true. Like whenever I used to
Exactly.
watch a lot of hockey with my friends, or I still watch some sports like I was getting at. And one thing that coaches will always throw out there before a game if they get interviewed is, hey, just have fun with it. And it sounds crazy, but then when you actually put your nose to the grindstone and you have this inner voice telling you, like, you need to absolutely do better at this, like, you suck at this, you're doing it wrong. At that point, it's less about you enjoying what you're doing and more about I absolutely have to reach this result or everything I have done has become entirely meaningless, which to what you were getting at, that just completely destroys the whole point of it. Like if you from what I've gathered, you don't have like this inner mind telling you like I have to reach this certain amount of subscribers or I have to reach this amount of viewers every stream or I didn't have to reach partner. And those things are nice to have, but it's not the reason why you do it. If the reason why you do it is just because of the success, and you can still have the journey, that can still be an excellent part of it. Obviously, going back to the sports example, why does anybody play the game besides they love it in the major
Hmm.
leagues, anyways? Is because everybody is trying to reach the epitaph. Everybody is trying to reach the championship, the goal. And that is still the main goal. But if you get there because you absolutely like had to suffer to get there, not in a way of, yeah, I pushed myself really hard and I feel good about this, but wow, I really had to make myself extraordinarily unhappy. And now I don't even really care about this result because getting there wasn't fun. That for me sort of destroys it.
Yeah, that's why specifically in regards to the speed running, I've never considered or at least felt like that I've pushed myself to that length of being dreadful about it because every time that I've wanted to improve what it is that I'm doing, it's always more lax and it's at least more thoughtful in the approach in terms of like what it is that I'm focusing on. If I and if I really enjoy the process of pushing myself with certain improvements because uh, uh, my history with with practicing itself, it does stem from the fact that before speedrunning, I was at least a little bit into fighting games. And I've always been the kind of guy who would be inside the training mode for hours and hours. And without even playing the game against other people, I just enjoyed the process of learning something new and perhaps applying it at some point in the future. And I just think that process is fun to me.
I feel like that's something valuable that a lot of people could take from is the process. What would you say to people who haven't really found something like that or maybe have struggled with that. Like they don't enjoy the actual process. They're just trying to get to the result.
I think of course, it's gonna depend on what it is that you're doing. I think it is just it is plain out advice, but but it is always good to consider why it is that you're doing what you're doing. And do you actually enjoy um what it is you're doing? Because there was there was a quote, I think, I think by Dave Grohl. I think it was a radio show at some point, and he did mention how like when garage bands would kind of like go through the grueling process of trying to get notoriety and get noticed and all that. But he did mention that you do what you do because you love it and don't expect much. And even then, if that's not enough, then just don't do it at all.
Yeah, it's just like the problem with that, and I think it's a great point. It's a great quote. The problem with him saying that is that he's Dave Grohl,
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Like if you talk to one of your buddies in a garage band who hasn't made songs like the Foo Fighters, in a way it seems a lot more relatable, which in a way is why I'm trying to do more of what you're saying is I'm not expecting to suddenly get called by Joe Rogan or some other big podcaster and be like, "Hey, I really want to have you on my show. I think you're this big voice. I think you're great." I think in a way being in a smaller community like this and getting my voice out to people that I'm close with that I know is arguably even better. I think that the amount of people you impact is more important than like the result you reach. And even then, like when you do reach that result, it's an entirely different ball game. Like I feel like you look at big media personalities nowadays, right? And like
Hmm.
Gordon Ramsay or some people who have had a profession, but then you just see how many commercials they're on and all of the things they're doing. And I personally stop and wonder like how much does this guy actually cook nowadays? Like does he still even have to do what he set out to do? Does he like do what he loves doing or is now his life just turned into this game of hey, like how much of my personality can I maintain? And in a way, I think that's detrimental. Like one of the biggest fears I guess I had about this podcast was obviously everybody in their life has had people in their past that perceive them a certain way or could probably tell them about something embarrassing you did or something horrific, even depending on the person that you did. And being out here with my face, my voice, and all, I know some people from my high school and from my middle school, my hometown, that would not say great things about me, that can say, like, yeah, I did some pretty like miserable things in middle school because I was a freaking idiot in middle school. I like didn't think things through at all. I was stupid and I was reckless. And so if people compare that Zach to the Zach that you're seeing right now, I almost feared that it would like destroy my credibility. But at the same time, I don't think I really can be afraid of that. And if something the other thing too is like if that issue exists, I want to be honest about it. I almost don't want to wait until somebody brings up something of like, oh hey, like this could have actually been a major problem. Now, I'm not saying I obviously haven't like killed anybody or done anything like that, but like if you've done something embarrassing in your past, it's like it's almost better if you just dig it out immediately and rip off the band-aid instead of just like sitting there and waiting for that to fester. I know I've gotten a little bit away from your main point here, but I love the quote with Dave Grohl, and I definitely think that is a main point of yeah, like one day you might actually get a lot of notoriety from it, and you can't expect that. But even if you do, just know that it's not all going to be like fame and rainbows. There might actually be some things about the startup that you really miss.
Exactly. Just because I've been doing this for about 5 6 years, and there's not really a moment where I expect that I am gonna hit it big, as one would say. But I think the like knowing that the process itself is enjoyable, and like the experience you get out of it with other people is one of a kind in this kind of field that that you could be in. I think that in itself is probably the most valuable thing that I can get out of this.
Yeah, I think I've talked about it. I think I've at least alluded to it because so far, right, the people on this podcast, I've brought on three people who speedrun video games. Now, a lot of people who
Hmm.
are going to listen to this podcast, there are some people who aren't going to like that or think it's a nerdy hobby. Like, why do you do that? Okay, well, why do you draw art or why do you like manage a library for a living? You can, in a way, you can almost beat anybody down about any point or anything they do. And so, I've said it once and I've said it again, but life is too short to worry about everything that anybody thinks about you. And like relatively speaking, like you and I, you're a California resident, I'm over here. We are in a state of society where we are at least able to like have a level of freedom and find things that we enjoy. Like I personally don't like my job. I wish I was doing more something like this or maybe I was writing as a profession. I kind of wish that could be my career. I wish that's something that I could do more because that's what gives me fulfillment. But that being said, I have the opportunity to do this to give fulfillment to myself and hopefully to some other people at all. And if I have that, then like who cares what somebody thinks of me at one point or what I do? I'm going to keep doing this. And if it brings me happiness, if I still understand that this doesn't come without a cost, that like there's a bunch of other things going on in the world, people are overseas and dying, I can look past a lot of the things I don't like because we have this slice of it. And that is something that not everybody on the planet says they can have.
Yeah, so like I also think that I agree as well. It's hard not to, but I agree that yeah, there's just there's just already a lot going on, and I feel like beating people down about the things that they enjoy. I think there's not really a lot of point in doing that. I feel like everyone has that kind of hobby or at least indulgence of of that variety where like yeah like you said you could just you know hound people for that for any reason. Like it's really easy to, but I think the inverse also should be true, where like oh, like people should be more understanding about like the like what people enjoy and could extract value from. Like I think that all like is what really ultimately should be you strive for, just like uplifting people in that way.
Uplifting people is something that is arguably the most important part of it. At least that's what I've heard. Do you think there's any exception to that rule? Do you think, hey, even if this doesn't make a lot of people happy, like, do you think there's some ulterior purpose? Like, if you're doing a lot of things, like if you're a government agent and you have to make some decisions that really aren't like great, like if you have to avoid helping some poor town, this is like a really out there scenario. But
Yeah.
do you think there's any scenario where there's an exception to that? Like, do you think that if something makes somebody happy, there's ever an excuse or a purpose to not do it?
I feel like the yeah, like you mentioned, I think those scenarios would be few and far between. I can't exactly come up with one at the moment, but I think usually it is the safe bet to at least if you at least see like that it's in terms of like it being harmless, and it is more of a like more on the hobby side of things, or something or other. I do think it is the safe bet is like I think encouraging others to to follow that line, I think is important, at least to to everyone's experience, I'd say.
Have you ever had an experience like that? Or let me word this correctly. Has anybody ever sort of beat you down for a hobby you've had? Or did you know anybody who sort of got reprimanded for something they did? Like, did anybody ever come up to you and say, like, speed running? Like, why are you doing this? Or why are you streaming?
Not directly, because I think the spaces that I've put myself in kind of already look down at that, so I've never had to worry about that personally. It's just more like the general sentiment of like online, like is kind of like where I get that from, I guess. but it is important to, like, even in that case, I don't particularly like listen to that kind of thing, because it is just better to assume that they just don't get it, and I think that's fine if people don't understand what it is that is enjoyable about these things that I do. Um, because there are things out there that I don't quite understand, like but like it's just I just don't put a lot of focus on that. I don't really mind it too much personally.
I mean, putting a lot of focus on that, which ultimately might just bring you down, like, oh, well, I love doing this, but like other people say it sucks, I shouldn't do it. The fact that you're looking past that, I feel is really valuable. Now, what kind of spaces would you say you've put yourself, like that you are in, have said that to you? Because from what I gather, California is a little more loose, shall we say. You find a wide variety of people in California. So, is there like a place you live where some people think maybe this is out there, or are you talking about some like online group?
Oh, more online groups rather,
Okay.
since because online more community driven, I'd say. It's easier to find the spaces where the your hobbies have community. For example, like you could have like a community based on the games that you play, things like the sports, no matter like what kind of sport it is, even as simple as like just, well, not simple, but more so something as something like like building things, like there's like I'll occasionally get some YouTube shorts on like people building like skateboards or guitars or Lego stuff like that. So that's why I'm saying, like, at least in the online spaces, it's more encouraged to at least you know to enjoy your hobbies a little bit more, at least.
I think because it's an online space, you going back to what we were talking about before, you don't have those kinds of people. Well, okay, I almost said something really stupid. You definitely have people online that can still beat you down because it's the internet. You're still going to find a lot of scumbags on the internet who want to beat you down and who think something is going to be weird or out there, but that's everyone because that's the
Absolutely.
internet. And I think, because I think a lot of that stuff is true, if you just find something online and then you don't even have to resort to looking at your own personal space for a community, you can find anybody who's going to be supportive or anybody who's not going to be supportive virtually anywhere. Like I can't say I knew a lot of people in my immediate vicinity that really liked speedrunning Fly going back to this point. The reason I
Hmm.
got into it was just because, hey, it was something that I saw one day. I didn't really realize there were a lot of people that still ended up doing it. But then when I found the community, I just started talking to people, and that in of itself was just cool. I think it was cool to be able to pick up my phone or go on my computer and find somebody from Virginia or from Philadelphia or from Finland or Norway even, which a lot of our community members are. Find
Exactly.
people from all over the place that can say, "Hey, I get it." And like I said, maybe it's even better to acknowledge at some point. I think it's one of the red pills of life that, hey, not everybody is going to like you. Not everybody is going to accept you, and that's okay. I think we have this vision of life where if somebody doesn't like you, you're doing something completely wrong. But when you dig into that, when you really think about that, we have so many different cultures and so many different religious and ethnic backgrounds and cultures. I might have repeated myself there, but from everything in the world, there's too many variables to control. And going back to what you said earlier about, well, I can't really worry about that. There's no point in worrying about that. Yeah, because why would you? Like, one of the reasons why I wanted to write that book, I think ultimately is because I would love to see it get turned into an animated series one day. I would love to see it reach more people in the same way that Discord communities or speedrun communities have. At the same time, I fully realize that like I can't expect that. I can't expect one person to call me up one day or say like, "Hey, I really like the concept of this story. I want to take this and I want to make it something great." You can't expect that because life like has no right or has no obligation to give that to you. In the same way that nobody has an obligation to give you subscribers on a Twitch stream, or nobody has the obligation to listen to somebody going to a restaurant to play guitar for tips. Nobody has an
Hmm.
obligation immediately to give somebody tips. I think we really just have to take out of life what we can. And it sucks when you see a lot of people around you that you feel work really hard and don't get the recognition that they necessarily deserve for it, especially when like maybe it's not something that you need recognition for, but you can see the effort and see the time that somebody puts into something and you go, yeah, that's really cool. Or hey, I want to be a part of this community because these people look like they're having a great time, and that's what I want to get out of life is just great time.
Yeah, I think removing the expectation from, from those scenarios is really important in that regard. Just like going back to the point of just like if you're just don't expect much from, from getting like that kind of like, notoriety from these things. But like I've always aligned with the fact that just I know like I as long as I personally know the values of what I'm doing, that's really more than like you need to, persist, doing these hobbies or, achieving these goals. That's, that it's going back, always going back to that topic because it is just that effective, at least to me personally.
Now, what would you say for the people that don't have a lot of self-motivation? I think I get what you mean because I have had a lot of days where I've been my own battery. You get up, you say it's going to be a great day. I love doing this. What would you say for the people that don't have that kind of motivation, who are more unhappy or have no drive to do it?
Mm, I feel, hmm, I feel like forcing yourself to have that drive. I don't think that is very helpful because you force yourself to do anything, you have like a worse relationship for that with what you're trying to do. So like in perhaps like the off day where you don't want to do anything, you just want to like stay in bed, or you just want to like not pursue anything for that moment in time. I do think it's important to at least be okay with that fact that it's just an off day, and at least take that time to at least do something that you know that you enjoy, and you could always get back to it at some other point in time. Once you're recharged, perhaps I'd say.
I think a lot of people really underestimate the power of just stepping away from something. I was a computer science major, and when I was in college, I absolutely had days where I would just sit in front of my computer for like 9 hours. And it wasn't because I loved coding to death. It was because, all right, like this absolutely needs to get done. And I would just completely like hate myself while I was doing it. I was like throwing myself at the brick wall. I couldn't do it. Or even like, I want to keep bringing it back to this because I feel like it's more relatable in the personal pursuit sense. When I was writing that book, when I've been writing that book, a lot of days when I got home, I told myself, okay, like now you have free time. Now's your chance. Now you're going to get to do this. And I had that inner voice in my head ticking and telling me, like, if you don't do this, like, what the hell are you doing? You must be wasting your time. But that's not healthy. And it's really no wonder in that sense that I really didn't end up writing much great stuff. Funnily enough, one of the best times I think I've come up with some of my best ideas is when I've just been sitting around and taking it in. Like I've just been taking a lunch break, and after 30 minutes something clicks in my head, and then I write out what this character would say or a real message I would want to say to the audience. And part of me thinks in my head, like, what the hell? You couldn't have thought about that earlier. But it's no wonder because if you're driving yourself to do it when, like, you really don't have the mindset for it, if you're forcing yourself to do it because you feel like you have to in of itself, that what's the word? Um, oh gosh, predicate. That predicate, I have
Hmm.
to, that in of itself has no base. That doesn't give you motivation. Now, if you were to change that into, I have to do this because it makes money for my family, or you with streaming, I have to stream today because I love doing it, and because a lot of other people love seeing me do it and love talking to me, those are like foundations that you can stand on, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why you know, uh I do think is it's important to, especially on those off days where you feel like you at least have to do something. I do think it's important to, to maintain the motivation. It is good to have at least a view of what you're trying to do, like in terms of the path forward, and to have at least actionable things that you can do, and perhaps breaking down like the goals into like smaller segments so you could at least uh you know do things easier in those times that you feel off and you don't want to do those things, to simplify it really.
I think goals are a big part of life that a lot of people don't have. So, to kind of relate this to some people that are listening to this and might not have that same drive or same motivation, what would you say your current goals are? What are you working towards right now with your job and with streaming?
mm, I think my current goals, hmm, it's interesting because I think at this point, at least the things that I strive for are more so things out of my control. It's
Mhm.
just I see like things like getting partner perhaps one day and things like that. That's more so just like a milestone instead of like a goal to strive for. But I think just in terms of what I want to do at the moment, I at least want to implement at least new facets of my stream, new qualities, to at least add more variety to either visuals or like some kind of actions that happen, through like redemptions or like upgrade the visuals, things like that. And that's what I mean when I say like, to break things down and make it simpler for me. Like I have like those smaller goals. Like, okay, well, if things are out of my control, I might as well do things like, you know, like look into, adding more like emotes. I might pursue that, or perhaps find like a new visual to put on my stream. Things like that.
Things to do, and yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it's really healthy to acknowledge and say to yourself, hey, this is within my control. This is something that I can do and that I want to do. And I'm excited, quite frankly, because I love a lot of your stream widgets. I think they're hysterical. I'll give the proper shout out at the end of the stream as well, but like if you guys haven't already, please go check out Gehis. He's true to his word. He is a character, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like he gives that stream a lot of life, and he's just a great watch. But yeah, I think that's something that I want to be able to relate to as far as goals with this podcast or my stream. Well, with my stream, I do a section of gaming and speed running before this. I don't know how many exact goals I have with it. I'll always have times to shoot for, and I'll always have a game I want to explore or a new trick I want to learn. Those are good goals to have. Those are things like that I can control. This podcast, though, is something I really want to push more into because I think that, like we were saying, all with motivation and purpose and all, I think this gives me more of that. Now, that being said, the goals I'm trying to shoot for right now are okay. I want to within 2 months. I want to get a better webcam because the one I have is just off of my computer and I can't zoom it in at all. So you guys get this glorious view of my kitchen and that Pennsylvania poster right over there in the background. I want to try and get one of those to improve the stream quality. I maybe want to do some optimization of my mic. I want to get a few guests on here that aren't speedrunners. In fact, one thing I've thought a lot about, I've been dancing around religion and philosophy a lot on this show. One thing I
Hmm.
would absolutely love to do is talk to one of my local pastors or talk to one of my old pastors from Michigan who's like a great friend of mine, absolutely amazing guy, and say, "Hey, do you want to come on this show? Do you think that'd be great?" Now, that would be amazing, but them saying yes is not guaranteed. That is not a goal to set because it is not something you can control. In the same way that, like you said, you reaching partner, it's more of a milestone. It's not something that you can control when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen. Where if you set that deadline for yourself and say, hey, I want to make this happen because I can do it with money or I can do it with hard work. If you understand how you're going to get there and you understand that, like, you want to get there, that helps a lot. The point I'm trying to make, if you're just sort of wandering through a lot of life and you don't really know how you're going to get there, or you're making goals for yourself that on the surface level are unachievable, not because of you, but because of luck, then you're going to end up miserable because you can't control that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people put a lot of a lot of emphasis in, the grand scheme of things, and to their detriment, because it would be very easy for someone else in my position to turn out in a negative way, I'd say, which I've observed a lot in my time. And people lose momentum because of that. I'd say, like, whether it's speed running or streaming or any other part of life. Um, that's just like a quality of myself that I'm proud of. Just the fact that I'm able to not put a lot of seriousness into it. I'm more lax about these things, and I'm just here to just enjoy myself. That's really the ultimate goal, in my opinion. I just want to I just want to trudge forward and see where it goes, and I'm probably gonna have a good time doing it. That's it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, like I said, Geek, I think you have a really great mindset. I think being positive and just looking forward is a great way to look at it. I think a lot of people, when they see goals or when they hear people say that, trudge forward or trust the process, it almost seems paradoxical based on what we're talking about because
Hmm.
we say, yeah, have goals to reach and have places to go, but also just trust the process and sort of live your life. It almost seems like you can't do both. That's why I say it's paradoxical, right? Is because it almost seems like you shouldn't be able to do it, but that's just kind of life in a nutshell. It just works like that.
Yeah, being able to surrender to it and fully embody, like, the fact that these things are out of your control, I do think is a huge part of, at least, who I am. Because a lot of things are not guaranteed.
Mhm.
But I think, like, as long as you carry like the belief that if you keep doing what you're doing, it is going to work out. I do think that helps more than it hinders.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you, in a nutshell, I hate to keep going back to this point, but you, like you said, knowing that in a way, hey, it's all going to work out. That isn't that why a lot of people turn to religion is because in a lot of religions they say like that's ultimately going to be where it's going to go. Like, hey, listen, God has a plan for you and everything that people say, but it might just work out in that sense. If you don't mind, I'm sorry if it seems like I'm cutting away from this point, but I heard you say it earlier and I kind of wanted to touch about this. If you don't mind elaborating, what kind of negative situation would you say that like a lot of people in your scenario could end up in?
Well, I think, like, in regards to, at least streaming, it's very easy to look at the numbers and the analytics, and to really stress about the next thing. um and because it is like, sometimes you do get momentum, but it really depends what you do with it. And if you're able to hold that, I think that's the important thing. um whenever you do get, like, an opportunity, like, are you able to hold that? And if not, well, that's more so what I mean. Just like, some people just aren't able to proceed in a positive way, I'd say. And it's funny because I remember my first world record in Sly one. I was definitely talking to. I think it was like there was at least some chat members in there. I forgot who it was, but um, I was more so like like touching that topic more or less that I'm able to at least proceed with speedrunning at that level because like I'm I'm not able to to at least be attached to certain outcomes, and other people would be attached and they would be really distraught by that if they don't succeed in that manner is what I mean.
So you think like would you say that's why a lot of people fall out of like that momentum, that role is because they face a lot of setbacks per se?
It's interesting because this is a topic I think about often, which is why I think a lot of people often lead themselves into burnout, because essentially what burnout is the pursuit of something, but it's always the same outcome that's not desired, basically. And it happens a lot in speed running. You know, people would continually you know move along towards that goal, but the outcome is not uh, being presented in the amount of time that they would like it to, which is why I do pride myself in the fact that I'm able to continue this journey that I'm on, and it's been consistent for about 5 years. Like I haven't felt the need to stop, unlike some people that have been in this position.
Yeah, I think that's something really valuable to have as well is the fact that you've been able to do it for so long and you haven't gotten burnt out or you haven't felt that like, oh yeah, like I'm getting really tired of this. I'm not going where I need to. And I think you're right. I think burnout is a huge part of why some people fail. Because it's like you said, it's why some people, if you get caught up on the actual result and not what you're doing or why you're doing it, then it's no wonder like you're going to look at it and you're going to go, "Oh, I'm not where I need to be. Like this sucks. I want to be here. I've been doing it for so long. Reward me for the love of Pete." That's the kind of mindset that a lot of people have. And specifically with speedrunning, I've heard Ricky say this a bunch. He's another guy that if he was willing to, it's another factor that's out of my control, but I would love to have him on this show. I've heard him talk about that extensively with some of the people's journeys he's covered with, especially the Jack series, where with
Hmm.
all the attempts that people put in with stupid things like flag proxy or the dark chicken or all this other garbage that you can run into, and it can just absolutely beat you down. And when you have those days where you just feel like you're not good enough, or man, I really want this time or this record, if you can't look back to the actual game and you can't remember if you can't look back to the game and remember why you're playing at all or remember why you're doing something at all, then the base is just going to crumble and you're going to fall straight through the ground, so to speak, because like at that point there's nothing left to catch you.
Hmm. That's why I whenever I do I do speedrun, since the beginning I've never carried the expectation that that I would you know achieve the goals that I mentally set, because from then and up till now, like even till the future, it's just more so that like I just enjoyed the act of speedrunning and the practice of it. And there was never a moment where I was like, "Oh, I'm absolutely going to achieve my PB or get world record at some point." I never thought about that until like I was basically on like that run, as they say. And it's just I really, the expectation is really like the thing that needs to be hammered home. Just like the fact that like you have to remove yourself from that outcome to to find the enjoyment of it. Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. Especially when the expectation when you're in the middle of a speed run like that, you know exactly how this feels because you've been on that run and I've been on some runs like that. But let's say you're running like a 31 minute, oh 31 hours, oh my gosh. If you're
Okay.
running a 31-minute game like Sly 1 and you're 15 minutes in, you just got past fish skip and you're starting to get that bubbling in your stomach of, "Oh my gosh, this might be the run." Now you like have to in that moment, especially detach yourself from the expectation because there are still 15 minutes left of that run where something can go wrong with your controller or RNG cannot go your way or something else can just completely spite you. And as cliche as it might sound to say, all you can really do if you get smited in that sense is figure out what you did wrong, if anything, or acknowledge why the result isn't there yet. And you kind of just pick yourself back up and you say, "This is what I want to keep doing. I want to keep going with this."
It's funny because I think in my last PB that I set for any percent, uh, it's a good showcase as to how little I actually think about how well I'm doing in that moment. Because I think I made it out of World 4 in that scenario, and then it instantly hit me as like, oh, this is actually a good run. I probably should have focused a little bit more. Because in all of these runs that I do, it's more so just me like doing back and forths with with the chat. It's more so just like even under the pressure, like I think I do perform better when I'm just I'm mindlessly talking to chat, and it's more enjoyable that way. And when it hit me, is like, oh, this might be a good speed run. That's what made me think of just like, yeah, I guess these days I'm pretty good at not paying too much attention to the outcome, I'd say.
I think that's a I think that's a big reason why personally I've been really bad in places like the Aces competition or why I really want to do more runs for Games Done Quick or live events like that. I think I've
Hmm.
become far too attached to what is actually going on and okay, like this could happen. Like I think the reason why the grind for the 4-1 record in Thieves in Time was so looking back on it miserable for me is because I always attached myself to the result. And when I got going there, even when I was bouncing back and forth with chat, it felt like a struggle. Like it felt like, okay, you are going to get this run and you are going to get it now. And if you don't get it now, it's going to absolutely suck and you're going to have to do a lot again. But guess what? You're eventually going to get back to the scenario and, you know, woodpecker in the brain would keep pecking away, telling me that it's never good enough and you absolutely have to do this. I feel like not everybody who picks up that hobby in particular has that mindset. Not everybody can just place themselves into that scenario you're in and sort of just get with the flow. Now, do you think you can grow into that? Do you think you can ever like develop that or do you think that it's sort of just something that you have?
mm, I think that is interesting because I think that kind of lends itself to like what some people talk about when it comes to you know being naturally born to do something like in terms of talent or learning into it, growing into it. But I think I've never considered what I do to be natural born talent because I feel like the experiences that you have can really lend itself to learning how to be more patient and uh you know detached from the outcome. I really do feel like is I think in my scenario, like I said, I started, like I like before the precursor to the speed running was I was into fighting games for a little bit, and I was hanging out in the training mode. It's like that, like having the patience to to work things out is a learned thing that you could fall into. I think.
Yeah, because I having the patience for that, especially like you were getting at, is something that I really struggle with. And honestly, that a lot of people struggle with. Because at one point, what are we but all just like miserable kids who want the candy bar immediately, who want that result immediately? Patience and really tempering yourself when you put it like that really is something that you have to grow into. And not everybody does, as sad as that is to admit. Like you've definitely, I imagine you've met some, and I've definitely met some in my lifetime adults who really don't even have that mindset, who still really just expect to be somewhere. And heck, when I got down here, when I moved down here, I was in this exact trap that we've been getting at is I think I had just lost my patience because of how I felt my work was going to go. I felt like there really wasn't a destination for me, and I felt like I really just wanted everything to change like that. But it just doesn't work that way, A. And like you said, I've got to kind of just detach myself from some of what I feel like I need to be or I could be. Because if you get weighed down by what you feel like you're not doing or what isn't happening, I believe all that's going to serve to do is prevent you from really learning, discovering yourself, from taking a step back, and then seeing, okay, like you are still in a beautiful place. You still have a lot of great people around you and there is a lot you can do. I wanted to save this topic for another podcast episode, most likely when I bring Sonic on, because I feel like he'd be a person who would excel at talking about this topic. But one of the greatest things I have learned from coming down here and moving and reading is that I truly do believe happiness is a choice. It's easier for some people if you're in a good financial standing or if you're in a good or bad standing with like a partner or your friends or your family. There's a lot of external factors, but even in a place as nice as this, when I moved down here, I was just weighing myself down mentally every single day and telling myself like my life is miserable, you like absolutely suck, dude, like what are you doing? And then meanwhile, going back to what I was talking about earlier in the episode, like listen, you entitled little dirtbag, there are people who are like going to war right now in other countries, people who just got their legs severed, there are people who just stepped on a landmine, there are some people who are getting religiously persecuted or locked up or under attack from like terrorist groups. You are here, you have a means of financial stability, you can talk to awesome people, you can go out to a bar and watch football with people, you have a house. There's so much to be happy about. And if you can't make that choice to be happy somehow, and I get it to a point, like emotion is still going to hit everybody. And there are some experiences where, yeah, like it's impossible almost to not be miserable. Like if you see your mother get killed right in front of you, I'm not going to say laugh and smile because that's horrific, but that's not the point. The point I'm trying to get at is you have to look at the bigger picture of it and where you are there. I would hope there is at least something good to hold on to. And this, especially for me, just being here talking to people is my good. I'm very happy to hear as well that your fighting games, your streams, your partner, your life in California. I'm happy to hear it's going pretty well for you too, man.
Yeah, I'd say that it is going well, and I do I'm glad you touched on it, but I also do think that n- you know most emotion is more so like a choice. I'd say like that's something I also live by, which is why like a lot of the immediate response that you have to basically in a scenario like you can just uh bypass the ego and just observe the immediate response you get, and you could just choose to act on it or not, I'd say.
Now, why do you think a lot of people okay, you know what? Maybe that is a stupid question, but a vast majority, it's fair to say a vast majority of people don't see it like that, though. They let emotions
Hmm.
control them. Now, besides the practical implications of like what caused that emotion, why do you think so many people really struggle with that?
Well, I because it is mostly like the ego thing in certain in like in the sense of like that's just the natural response, because the ego is it thinks what it thinks because that's just like what it's meant to do, like it's a survival like instinct, right, to to act on like immediately on your emotion for just for purely survival, I'd say. But like when you really like think critically about it, I think it like you could get to a point where you could just observe it and allow it to to feel what it feels, but you could you know, just decide to just like let it be what it is and you know, go the other direction, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. It's one, and I've seen this exact concept pop up in my YouTube feed of all places. I've been watching a lot of psychology videos and whatnot in preparation for more of these episodes to educate myself
Hmm.
more. But this very concept popped up was the greatest freedom you can experience is if you end up freeing yourself from emotion. And I feel like it's sitting here and talking about it to some people, it's inevitably going to sound unbelievable. Like, how do you just detach yourself from it? How do you just walk away from it? And I should probably go watch that video after we finish this episode because to some degree, even I don't know. I will say, like, there are some things, I think the biggest challenge of that for me personally is there are some things that I don't know what causes me to get so inflamed about it, but I just like that's that one instinct. Everybody has that thing where if an issue comes up or some other thing from your past perhaps gets brought up, it really just sparks something within you. And one of the greatest things I've heard as well, branching off of that, is that anger is really just a reaction to your past. I was listening to a podcast and this guy was basically telling me about how he gets angry when some people deceive him specifically because when he was a kid, he bought this laptop for $500 and then he opens the box and it's like a box of bricks. And that just made him so angry. And he kind of carried that with him through a lot of his life. I honestly think that I have that sometimes with my family. Like sometimes constructive criticism is something that I need to acknowledge. And I like it when some people come up to me and say, hey, dude, like, if you want to improve the podcast in this way, I think this would be great. Or even like Olby was telling me after the first episode of some of the tech issues that Kay and I had. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm glad it was a good listen, but also thank you for acknowledging that. I need to get to the root of that problem. And I really need to figure out like why criticism, specifically from like my family, sometimes depending on the issue, it just makes me like so angry. In fact, I kind of don't mind sharing this on stream because like you were saying, Geek, it's just like about having fun. I made a change to my X account, one that I was planning on sharing the podcast on. And so I talked to my friend who's around my apartment complex. He says, hey, like, would you mind taking this picture for me? It would be great. Like, I think this is going to look a lot more professional. It's going to be great. And then I repeated myself there, but he does it. We get the picture. I post it. And then when I look at my text feed, my dad is texting me. He's like, "Where did you get that photo from?" I said, "I had my friend take it. Why?" And verbatim, my dad responds like, "I think it looks homosexual."
No,
Like,
brother.
just like I don't know why, but like that for me was like because I no offense, I don't want to seem like that. I know I'm sitting here in a sweater, but I digress. Like I I just like when I hear that, I heard that and I'm like, what do you mean? I was just trying to have a better appearance. I was just trying to do this. Why did it look like that? And I think maybe it has something to do with being misunderstood by my family. I think that's something I would really have to dig into. But to tie this all back up into a little bow with what you were originally getting at, Geek, is I have to be able to choose to walk away from that emotion. And I feel like that's not super easy for everybody to do. So, would you say you have anything like that? Like, there's one thing that just like this is my tick, or like this is an emotion that like I can't walk away from that you would be willing to share with the podcast?
Mm, I think yeah, one that immediately comes to mind that happened at least a little bit recently. How I'm pretty good about maintaining positivity, and at least keeping my chin up when when things go things get rough in at least speedrunning. But one thing that does set me off is when people like intentionally trying to to like damper the mood and try to get me to focus on the things that went wrong on my behalf, it seems like that yeah, that thing, like, that would absolutely, like, actually is one of the things that sets me off, I'd say.
Like when you mess up a trick and then somebody in chat immediately says like, well, it might be time to reset."
Yeah, things like that, because I am perfectly fine with things going bad. That's like one of the things you accept and when you're doing this. But when people are like, yeah, like on my behalf would be saying things like that. Like I definitely do not appreciate that.
I think that's just a like I said, I think that's a reflection of your character. I think a lot of people listening in on this might be somewhat envious of the amount of positivity that you have and the fact that you can be your own battery. Because I think a lot of people are in a state where they they can't just do that. They can't just like be happy in some scenarios. But I think it's a power. I really do think that it's something like being patient or like being humble. It's something that we all have to work on. And I'm probably not half as good at it as I think I do, so I could use more work on it, but I think it really is great. It's great to have.
No, absolutely. I think the I feel like at least like you know the observation of it is important. Like before observing it and the desire to understand it is gonna it does go a long way in that regard. I'd say.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think that's maybe that's one reason why I majored in computer science to begin with is because I have a desire to understand a lot. I've had a lot of my family members tell me that I'm always digging for a lot of answers. It's probably the reason why I started this podcast to begin with is just because like that's a part of my personality. That's kind of just what I like to do is I like to dig. I like to get under the surface of things. And I remember just as a kid, like computers and video games were always the one thing that made me just think. Like you were playing Pokemon as a kid, and then you go through a door, and all of a sudden everything in the background is black, and you're in a brand new place. You sit there and you wonder, like, how does that work? So, wanting to understand something like that is really cool. I think, in a way, maybe it's even like the basis for any hobby. Is you see somebody draw a cool picture or make a movie or shoot a cool camera angle and you always want to understand how that works. And maybe for a lot of people the reason why emotion is so difficult not only because well, it's emotion at the end of the day, but some
Hmm.
people don't even get that far. Some people don't even think, yeah, okay, well this is something I can try to understand. They just kind of perceive emotion as this thing that everybody has, like everybody gets angry or everybody can be happy or sad or moody. And it's the truth. There's a lot of other factors, like I said, with what happens in your life or even what you eat, how much you sleep, when you get up. All of those things can impact your mood as well. But it's something entirely different that I would love to dig deep into. And that I think you've provided a lot of great insight towards.
No, yeah, I usually think about this topic often because it is bound to happen with a little self reflection. Like even if like you have a little bit of that, you end up thinking about those topics a little bit more deeply.
Mhm. Would you say that's maybe that's why a lot of people don't think about those topics? Is a lot of people don't make that time to reflect?
I'd say so, and also the fact that some people are averse to self reflection. With the idea that you know there's some aspect of them that they are not happy to see. I think that's usually a contributing factor to that kind of thing.
Sorry, I'm trying to think of a follow-up to that. What it's like some aspect of their self that they're not happy to see. Like you I'm sorry. I'm trying to dissect that point. So you think that like with somebody perceives something about themselves and you think that makes it harder for them to sort of reflect or look at one thing critically?
Yeah, because I think it's more so the fact that one could look within and what they see is flaws, and I think that's what's more so what they're averse to, the fact that they look at themselves and they're not, that they believe that they're not, um normal feelings to have, I think. But in our reality, that's just the human experience, I'd say.
Mhm. Yeah, like everybody looks at something that they do wrong or something that they get afflicted by, and they think it's this abnormal problem that they're unable to solve. Whereas, like, at the end of the day, everybody has certain issues like that. And so I think that's what you're getting at, is like that's why it makes it hard for people to reflect, is because all they see is a problem and it's like, oh man, like I don't know if I could solve this. This is just something wrong with me. This is like I will never be able to write this, or like I'm just so angry. I get angry so easily. That's kind of the line we're walking from what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Sorry if we got hung up on that for a minute. I just want to make sure that like I'm getting your point across to the audience and that I'm understanding this as well. Yeah, I think that's just something that also kind of goes in line with this feeling of like self-empowerment and really understanding yourself, is also understanding like what could be a flaw. And I think that everybody who doesn't really stop to think about it might just see those kind of aspects and consider them just that. Like they don't see it as a challenge to overcome or something that's controllable about their character. They just see it as something they were intrinsically born with that they can't ever hope to overcome. And I think it's hard to tell people to be able to stop and think when we have so much nowadays, when we have, like Twitch everywhere, YouTube Shorts, Facebook Reel. I touched on this a little bit with Takei when we did his first episode, but I think a lot of that stuff just makes it hard for a lot more people to focus and think critically. In fact, it's kind of ironic that we're sitting here talking about this as two streamers. I feel like a
Hmm.
lot of people would immediately look at our, hobby, and they would say, "Well, these guys aren't going to talk about anything good." I'm not saying we haven't. I'm saying that might be a general stereotype or a perception. And I think we've done just the opposite. Like, I really think this has been valuable. And I think a lot more people could do with that. I think that just taking some time to really reflect on what do I deem are issues in my life, or what do I deem are these breaks between my family or my friends, and how can I sort of come to grips with this and be a better person?
Yeah, I think the it does help to have, more of an open mind to, to at least understand that, yeah, like, even though, like, we are specifically, like, in our own, fields, as it were, we are, experiencing life as such, and we have different things to take from it, and if everyone has their own perspective to put out there, and I think all of it's valuable, even if it's like, no matter how small it is. I think, like, everyone has something valuable to say about, all these topics.
Mm. Yeah, and that's why I'm really glad that we have this at all. That's why I'm glad that I've been bringing on a bunch of people from different perspectives. Like on the surface, I think that maybe you and I were both raised in very different environments in very different ways, and I can especially say that for like Cinder and I. When I brought her
Hmm.
on last time, I understand that her and I are from very different backgrounds and very different walks of life. But at the same time, that's what makes this great. Like I love just having this kind of talk, and I'm excited to have more people from our community on here, whether it's from Denmark or whether it's from Finland or wherever it may be. And then also just contrasting that with some people that I've known in real life that are from here, because you get the whole radius. You get to embody that whole, like all these different walks and all these different parts of it. And some people inevitably aren't going to be great at articulating it. Like there are some people who, yes, have their own experience, but are just incapable of verbalizing it in a way that sounds professional or at least understandable, is the best way I can put it. But that being said, I think it's still extremely valuable to have people from all these backgrounds here at all. And it's great that I'm able to talk to people that, when it push comes to shove, are very different from me, but I don't really care because we kind of acknowledge, yeah, these are the important factors of life, and it's good to talk about this. It's important to talk about this, and why shouldn't we?
Yeah, I do think it is exciting to hear the different perspectives on certain aspects of life, because, like, it is good to get a more well-rounded thought, because of that. I'd say, like, the more experience that you get from others, it adds to your own. And, like seeing things from different angles really, I think, you know, fills out the thoughts you may have on, certain things that you wouldn't consider beforehand.
Mhm. Yeah, and especially for my age, like I'm 23, and there's a lot that I really haven't experienced. Like you said, I have a lot of blanks that I still need to fill. I haven't done a lot of practical things that I really feel could be great. I also haven't been around to a bunch of, like I haven't been to war zones or I haven't been to a bunch of foreign countries. There's a lot that I couldn't even hope to understand about that or hope to understand about cultures or perspectives that I feel like something like this really helps to fill it in. Again, I really think you hit it on the head with you can't expect to get notoriety from this, but I just love the fact that we have this here and that anybody who may comes to it, take it or leave it. I just hope that they are in fact taking something from this, whether it's like something about yourself or something about a country that's miles away that you never would have seen. Like I barely knew anything about Finland before I joined the Sly community. And now I
Of course.
know a lot of things about it, like with how some of the people are about their mandatory military service, about like some cultural things like their instruments, like saunas. It's just fun and it gives you a lens into a lot of different walks of life that you never thought was possible.
Yeah, pursuing the understanding of, the other ways of life, I think is something I also enjoy about doing what I do. With the fact that like so many, people from walks of life that are different from mine are able to enjoy the same thing that I'm able to. And I think that is very exciting.
Hmm. Yeah. So God bless Twitch. Besides all the things that people wish were different about Twitch, is what we're getting at.
I love the internet.
No, the internet is certainly a place, but hey, I've met some pretty cool people from it, so can't
Yeah, we could
complain.
get some good out of it.
You got to find good out of it where you can, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Gaius, I mean, this episode is going to be something to edit. It's going to be like an hour and a half long. This is the longest episode of this we've done, but I think this is truly like one of the better ones we've done. I think we hit a lot of great points today. So thank you once again for coming on to the show. If you guys want to go support this man, which once again I encourage that you do. He's a great personality, gives a great stream, great talks, great time. His socials and his Twitch channel will be linked in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or perhaps on the description of the Spotify episode. If you're watching this when it goes up on Spotify, there will also be the end card where you can find all the socials directly. But yeah, Geek, do you have any final words? Anything to add before we close things out?
Yeah, it was a pretty excellent experience to be part of this, and I enjoyed this quite a bit. And just for anyone out there, just have fun with what you're doing. Just take it easy on yourself, really.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. All right then. Well, listen to what the man says, just like enjoy what you do and take what you can out of life as we try to solve the life equation. But in the meantime, as we continue to go forth and as we continue to try to solve it, thank you everybody for listening. And I will catch you all next Sunday. Next Sunday's stream, next Sunday's episode is going to be a little bit different. I have some family coming to visit, so I'm not exactly sure when we're going to be able to fit the episode in. So stay tuned. You can join the Discord down below if you guys want to stay tuned on that. I will let you know exactly what time we are going to be uploading that episode, as well as the stream. The stream we'll have to figure out, but all of that will come in due time. But until then, Gaius, once again, thank you very much for coming onto the show. It was a blast talking to you. It was a great time. And everybody else, take it easy, y'all. Peace out.